Claire.
Here.
Michelle.
Here.
Greg.
Here.
And I'm also here, all present.
Great, thank you. We are going to start with the Board of Supervisors report, and we have Lena Silberman here from Supervisor Don Horsley's office to present.
Thank you. So to start, I know very little about this project, which is disappointing because it's an exciting project, but I just learned that Caltrans has begun to remove hazardous trees and fuels from the Montera bypass lands. And for people who don't know, those are basically lands that were purchased prior to the tunnel with the thoughts that they might make a road that way. And then they've just been lying dormant with a lot of eucalyptus trees. So they're going to begin some fuel there. I'm only going to touch on one of the El Granada projects, which is the median project. The tree removal started on the 1st of this month, and they're seeing some good progress, and DPW is hoping to have it completed by the end of this month. DPW's biologists and parks arborists have both regularly been on the site to monitor the work, and they've been having Dan Krug, who is the parks arborist, help with trying to consider the aesthetic balance in the areas that are having not all the trees removed, which are R1 and R4. There will be additional updates posted on their website, so I'll include a link to that in the chat. There's a new beach access at Vassar Street. That project was delayed because of seal pupping season, but it was completed rather quickly, so that's done. And the DPW team asked me to thank, they're probably not here, but the community member that brought them chocolate chip cookies on one of the days they were working. And then just want to let everyone know that redistricting is happening. For those that don't know, that happens every 10 years. And we have several public meetings set up. These ones will be kind of educating on the process as well as taking time for comment. I'll include more information on those meetings, but they are all going to be relatively similar, and they're on the 11th, the 13th, the 18th, and the 20th. And there'll be another one in the works too that's being rescheduled. And then lastly, just a touch on COVID-19. As of September 3rd, 15.4 new cases. We were seeing 15.4 new cases per day for that 100K population, which is slightly higher than last week. This is an actual average of 121 new COVID cases per day compared to 115 the week before. I have some more data that I can also include, but I just want to let everyone know that we are preparing a bigger rollout of the booster for Pfizer, and we're preparing for the boosters, possibly Moderna as well, depending on what we're told. And then lastly, there's some interesting data. I'm trying to get some more information, but El Granada, Lomamar, and Moss Beach all appear on the county website to have very low vaccination rates. I think all under 70%. So I've been trying to get in contact with the Chief of Health Systems for some information on that. So far, we've been told that it's part of their geocoding, and because of the PO boxes, the geocoding isn't working particularly well. I personally don't know what geocoding means, so I need to get a little more information on that, and hopefully I can get some clarity on it. But those are all my updates, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Okay, thank you, Lena. And if anyone has any questions for Lena or at any point during the meeting, you can raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand function. And you can find that under multiple places, but there is, usually it's on, if you're on a desktop or a laptop computer, it's under the reactions tab. And then you click that and you'll see the raise hand button. You can also maybe find it under the participants tab if you're not finding it under reactions. If you're on a mobile phone on the Zoom app, you can find it under the More tab. And then if you're dialing in from a cell phone, it would be *9. So I see a few raised hands for Lena. We'll start with Dan Haggerty.
Yeah, thank you, Lena. So you mentioned redistricting every 10 years. There's a lot of districts. Could you elaborate exactly what you're reporting on, please? I'm sorry.
sorry. Yes, absolutely. This is the county redistricting. So
For supervisor office, what?
for supervisors,
Okay.
this is the countywide level of it. So for election's sake, it's mostly supervisors that makes a difference for.
Okay. Thank you. And
Thank you.
yeah, you mentioned that Caltrans was doing starting some tree trimming up in Montera, and I guess that's great. They were also working today at I think it's Medio Creek, and it looks like they'll be there tomorrow, which is causing some traffic impacts on Highway 1. But just kind of keep, I think it must probably same project, same the Montera and Highway 1. They're probably Caltrans are probably doing multiple locations. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Next, we'll go to organic bandwidth. If you want to share your name, you can for our notes and then or for our minutes, and go ahead and ask Lena your question.
Thank you. May I assume this is like the 3-minute public comment period?
That's going to come in just a minute. So if you don't have a question for Lena right now, then we'll please put your hand down now. And as soon as we get to section 2, which will be public comments, I can call on you then.
Perfect. I'll try doing that, but do it for me if you can.
Okay, sounds good. Next, I'll go to Jill Grant.
Hi, Lena. Thanks for all the information. Can you tell me if the Board of Supervisors is preparing for in-person meetings?
So that's a great question. I haven't heard of anything, which would make me assume that not a whole lot of preparation has happened, although that's probably with the county manager's office and the county clerk's office. But we haven't gotten any direction as to that. So I'd have to follow up with those offices and see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Lena? Okay, thank you so much, Lena. We'll talk to you again in a later agenda item, but right now I'm going to go on to our next public official, which would be Harvey Rarbeck from Half Moon Bay. Welcome, Harvey.
Thanks. I got some bad news and some good news. As Lena mentioned, because rates of COVID are increasing in the county, the city council last night had the sad duty to not grant a permit to the public pumpkin festival, the mini festival that was supposed to be held in October. So that has unfortunately been canceled. And at the same time, we canceled the end of summer music fest, which has also been a big draw because of COVID concerns. It's sad, but we felt we had no other choice. The good news is, if you want to call it that, at the last 2 city council meetings, we've had a number of constituents who have explained that the lack of affordable housing in Half Moon Bay and the coast side, for that matter, is driving people away from the coastside. It's causing multiple families to have to live in very crowded conditions. So we're fully aware of how dire the situation is. And we're scheduling a meeting in early November to see what we can do about producing more affordable housing. It's a really difficult problem. We're fully aware of that, but there might be some solutions, and we are investigating every possible avenue to create more affordable housing in Half Moon Bay. Lastly, at the city council meeting last night, we have agendized a discussion about the city annexing Moon Ridge affordable housing development. That's just the beginning of a long process if it occurs, but will affect life on the coast side. And I thought you might be interested in all that. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Harvey? Please raise your hand. Len Erickson.
So Harvey, what you just said about Moon Ridge, it's already has a dedicated population, is saying, rather than focus on migrant or immigrant workers in agriculture, et cetera, that it's taking a more general approach, and will it expand its capacity?
Not necessarily. This is a preliminary investigation about annexing that whole environment, that whole area. But we haven't even begun to discuss what would end up with any changes in the environment of the people who live in Moon Ridge.
By that, you mean nurseries that used to be there and are no longer in business? You're acquiring more land? Is that what it means?
It would mean annexing the land that Moon Ridge occupies right now, and all the people who live there.
When you say annexing, is it outside the city limits and you're putting it inside the city limits?
Exactly. I should have explained that. Yes.
Okay.
A lot of people don't understand that Moon Ridge is outside the city limits. It's contiguous with the southern border, but it's currently outside the city limits. Yes.
Okay, so that's an ownership. What impact would that have on its operation? Or I mean, I guess it's not, if it's not changing capacity or operation, what's the net gain of who by doing this?
It will give the people who live there a voice in city government. We've already started with redistricting. We had our first Latino city councilman elected. The majority of people who live in Moon Ridge are Latinos. It seems like they're part of the community. They're 30% of Half Moon Bay, and if we succeed in annexing them, that will increase the power that the people who live there, mostly migrant workers, like you said, not all, some fishermen. When the county established the area, it was meant only for migrant workers and fishermen. Slightly expanded since then.
So will the redistricting then happen in time to take this into account, or will that be something that has to be rationalized down the road?
Yeah, the redistricting has to be done by March. And realistically, there's absolutely no way that the annexation could occur by March. So it would be after our current redistricting.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, next I'll go to Jill Grant.
Hi, Harvey. Thanks for joining us. I have two questions. My first one's similar to what I asked Lena. If Half Moon Bay is preparing for in-person meetings, and my second question is there any research into acquiring land for RV dwellers? Because we have quite a few essential workers living in RVs now.
Let me answer the first. Right now, state law is saying that that all meetings have to be in person starting in October 1st. That's probably going to change, but we don't know that for sure. So we are preparing for having hybrid meetings, just like MCC is, starting in November. And it's a little more difficult for us because where we would have the meetings at the Ted Adcock is also used for all kinds of other activities like pickleball, for example.
Oh.
And I know it sounds silly, but we have to figure out a way that we can have sensible hybrid meetings at Ted Adcock, if that's the way we're going to go, and also accommodate all the other uses. Your other question had to do with RVs, is that right?
Correct. So we were talking about affordable housing and.
Yeah. In our local coastal plan, which was just certified by the Coastal Commission, there are what we're calling overlays, housing overlays that include the ability to have RVs in more locations on Highway 92. So our RVs are one form of affordable housing, and when it's appropriate and does not disrupt the neighborhood, we're going to try to have more of them.
Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Okay, and next, Greg Diegues.
So Harvey, there was a study out of UCLA called the Vacancy Report, and I'll send it to you if you're interested. And it showed that about 2/3 of the housing in Los Angeles area was owned by investment interests rather than residents. And I was wondering whether there are any conditions on Moon Ridge and other affordable housing to prevent them from being used as short-term rentals, because certainly in my neighborhood, there seems to be an increase in, let's call it, non-residential residences. Thanks.
I'm glad you brought that up, Greg. Another thing we did last night was pass a short-term rental ordinance. And the thrust of that ordinance was to make sure that housing stock stays housing stock and is not used in a motel-like way. So we're requiring that anybody who has a short-term rental live in that house. We are allowing 60 days a year for what we're calling non-hosted rentals. But the idea is to make sure that this trend of having corporations take over housing stock, we're very much against it, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure that that is not the case with housing in Half Moon Bay.
Okay. Any other questions for Harvey? All right. Thank you so much, Harvey.
You're welcome.
Next, do we have any other government officials who would like to speak during this section? Okay, I don't see any other hands raised from government officials, so we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is public comment and announcements. So if you do have a public comment tonight on any item that is not on tonight's agenda, as a reminder, has a section on county coordinator grant opportunity letter of support, wildfire preparedness, and hybrid meetings. So if you have any comments on topics other than those, now's the time to speak. So I will start with in the order of hands raised, which is Mark Baker first. Mark Baker, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead and unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah, hi, my name is Mark Baker. I'm the founder of softlights.org. We are an advocacy group that consists of people who are being harmed by LED lights. We have 1,200 members as part of the Facebook groups Soft Lights and Ban Blinding LEDs. I'm here tonight to provide information to the Midcoast Community Council about the dangers and myths of LED lights. The Illuminating Engineering Society is an industry-sponsored organization that has provided the cover story for the lighting industry to sell and install LED lights. The IES claims that LEDs are, quote, point sources of light. This false statement has allowed the utility companies and lighting manufacturers to pretend that LEDs are just like spherical emitters when the truth is that LEDs emit an entirely different type of directed beam light. Our group members have documented that LEDs have caused epileptic seizures, debilitating migraines, psychological trauma, and eye damage. One of our members suffers a seizure every time she encounters an LED light. She has suffered hundreds of seizures, which has resulted in broken bones and lost teeth. At this time, she has filed a complaint with the Human Rights Commission, which is investigating the city and utility company that installed the LED lights where she lives. LEDs do not save energy as claimed by the lighting industry because LEDs are not a like-for-like light in comparison to HPS or incandescent. LEDs are discriminatory because they create illegal barriers to access for light-sensitive persons. The use of LEDs outdoors has increased light pollution and kills more insects than high-pressure sodium. Because of the directed beam nature of LEDs, cumulative or even instant eye damage is probable. For more information, please visit our website at www.softlights.org. We are also available to assist the MCC with research, analysis, and policy related to natural night resource protection as a free public service. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. Next, I'll go to Bill Sofke.
Thank you. About a half an hour ago, I was sitting on a folding camp chair 100 feet from the surf on Montara Beach, watching the surfers and the seabirds kind of flow through the airstreams. And it was an incredibly rejuvenating experience. Weirdly enough, I am one of the few scientists in the world who can explain why, in terms of the microtime structure of the turbulence of the surf, the way in which the fog and the sunlight were interacting behind me, the three-dimensionality of the vibrations, the sand around my toes, things like that. That's why my wife and I moved here 2 years ago, because we understood how important it is to be around nature. I happen to be an expert on the nervous system. My wife happens to be an expert on narrative theory and other abstract things like that. But both of us understand that the statistical structure of the natural world is what rejuvenates the nervous system. This is a scientific understanding, fairly recent. And I have a pedigree where I can explain it in all kinds of different terms. But I grew up coming to the coast side. I mean, I lived in Menlo Park, now home of Silicon Valley. My parents were nuclear physicists, but we came out here every couple of weeks, passing down 84. I bought succulents at that little tiny shack, and we threw firecrackers around at Pescadero Beach. The reason I'm telling you is that I would like to offer essentially my services as a consultant. I was paid very, very well in Silicon Valley for giving scientific advice to people who are running very big companies. And I got to essentially tell them what's real and not. But that doesn't really match my desire to tell truth to people who matter. My mom was a local reporter. She worked for the Country Almanac for 40 years. She was there when Portola Valley was founded. She knew people like Ollie Mayer and Lenny Roberts. I understood from her how important local government is. And instead of giving my scientific advice about things like LED lights and ultra timing and the various kinds of intrusions of technological innovations, which you have to decide on, rather than giving that advice to people who are going to make more money on it, I'd like to be able to offer, ideally take you to a picnic on the beach and we put our toes in the sand and I just explain how the nervous system works. And that way you'll know how to address issues like Mark Baker talked about and like a zillion others that I know you face every couple weeks. I'd like to give you that advice for free. It works better in 3 space. If you want, I'll have a carbon dioxide monitor so you'll be guaranteed you don't get COVID because I know how to read those things too. But one way or another, I'd like to help you, but I have to be invited. That's kind of how it works. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Bill, for that. Do we have any other speakers during public comment? Len, go ahead.
This is really to the people who've just spoken. The council really does not comment on items under this agenda item, but if you have specific information like web links, etc., you can post them in the chat, which is the best way to get specific information like that out to us without further interaction.
Yes, thanks for that context, Lynn. And, we will, we'll probably the next time we'll discuss anything related to this will be under agenda item 6 will be future agendas. So we can talk about whether, we would want to, we can have offline meetings. A subset of the members of the council could have offline meetings with you. If we want to have meetings with more than 3 members of the council at any given time, it has to be done in a public meeting that's calendared and posted for everyone to see. But we will probably talk during future agendas, item 6, at the end of this probably very long meeting around 9:30 or 9:45 p.m. We'll talk about what to do next. And these meetings are recorded and posted on YouTube. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the consent agenda. Dave, I don't believe we have minutes.
Yeah, the minutes are not completed, so I'm going to pull this item. I apologize to everybody, but I have a lot going on.
No problem. We will put those on the agenda for next meeting, along with tonight's minutes, if we can get those done by September 22nd. Okay, thank you. Next is we'll move on to the regular agenda. The first item on tonight's regular agenda is a California Fire Safe Council County Coordinators Grant Opportunity Letter of Support. I'm going to introduce it and then I'm going to turn over to Lena to give a little more context. The letter is posted on the MCC website, and I'll pull it up here in a moment. But basically, this is something that we've been talking about a bit as part of the California Fire Safe Council and the local Fire Safe Council meetings that Len and Greg have been attending. I think we became aware of this grant opportunity by the California Fire Safe Council, which is basically a grant that can be given to several different counties in California that will enable them to hire a county coordinator that will help with fire preparedness, and Lena can go into more details on that. But Lena had provided a form letter of support, which we made a couple slight modifications to, and that's the letter that we're attempting to get approved tonight. So I'll hand it over to Lena to give a little more information, and then I'll pull up the letter.
Great, thank you, Michelle, and that was perfect. I'll try and go over it really briefly, and then if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those. This is a grant that's a little different than the ones we've seen. Usually these grants are for fuel reduction or for specific projects. This is for billable hours. So this is a grant where we can have, and the only way I can think of it is the way Greg said. He always sees that the fires are, and now that's always stuck in my head, but that's basically what it is. It's a coordinator with all the different agencies that are doing different fire related and fire resiliency projects. It's someone who can be coordinated between all those people and then also help with those projects. So an example is, let's say the Parks Department wants to do a project in a park, but they just don't have the bandwidth to manage that. This person could do that. If community members want answers about what's planned for their area, ideally this person could also do that. So whether or not this position is permanent is still up for decisions. It's a 2-year grant. It's up to $175,000, and it's for half the counties in the country, in the state. So we're feeling pretty optimistic at this point. But any letter of support is extremely helpful, and that's why I've come to you to ask for it. And I'm sure I've missed some big points, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, I'm just going to share the letter on the screen. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Oops, that is the website. So links on our website are available to both the information about the grant and then the draft of the letter. So basically, I won't read it in detail, but it basically says we support this application for the grant. It's addressed to Julia Marsili and Amber Gardner, who are part of the California Fire Safe Council, who are going to be making the decisions on the grants. Gives them history. about the County of San Mateo and wildfire preparation, talks about the areas of the county that are in very high, and moderate severity zones, links to the map, and then basically says, yes, we support it. Here are some reasons why. And that's about it. Okay, so next I'll go around to members of the council for any clarifying questions on the letter of support. And I'll start with Dan, who has his hand raised. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Lena. It seems kind of, I'm trying to scroll up, but I can't. I was looking, let's see, I'm trying to look at that letter. Let me go to my other section there. Okay, so, is it fair to say, it's just kind of complicated, hard to kind of grasp in one sitting. Is it fair to say that the Fire Safe Council is an existing California setup, and that we are essentially, San Mateo County is asking to have some funding for like a consultant that could apply, like you said, if there's a certain park that doesn't have the bandwidth, et cetera? Is that the essential purpose of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my understanding of the grant is there's a lot of flexibility. Once the money is granted, there's a lot of flexibility in how it's used. So broadly for this grant, you could just hire a consultant, you could hire a salaried position, or you could pay billable hours for someone who's already hired through Fire Safe or the county. Those are all options. For us specifically in San Mateo County, what's being discussed is a position. I don't know if it would be hired or billing someone who's already hired through the county for new work that they're focused on, but hiring someone under the Office of Emergency Services, which is also called Department of Emergency Management. Right now it's a bit confusing, but under that department, and they would be working on this for, I think, full time, that's what's being discussed at this point. And I think you said about the Fire Safe Council. So San Mateo County has the oldest Fire Safe Council in the state, but this money is through the state Fire Safe Council. That's who's granting it. I might have missed your question at the beginning about that.
Yeah, no, I just didn't understand how it worked, really. Thank you. I'm slowly understanding it a little bit better. I'll be listening to any other questions on this. Yeah. I'll just leave it at that. And I'm just hoping that, the money just doesn't get, that actually goes to some good and actually gets some trees, does some good work, and not, some of it kind of sounds bureaucratic, and sometimes money just gets, kind of moved around and doesn't really get a lot of good things done. So I'm gonna pray for the best out of it, and hopefully it will really come out to be a positive thing. I'm not gonna get in the way of it, but I am interested in other questions and other answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Yep, as a reminder, just try to keep your questions to clarifying, and you'll have an opportunity to speak about how you feel about the letter a bit later. Greg, do you have a clarifying question?
Oh, yeah. I'm in support of this, obviously. I've asked for this for a long time. But my question of Lena is, I take it then that the governance structure is not yet defined for this person to fit in. And then so a follow-up question to that is going to be, how can we contribute to designing that governance structure? Thanks.
Great questions. governance structure, you're right, is in the process of being decided. The thing that makes it this complicated is just that it's so flexible. So we could even, like, let's say we were hiring someone, hypothetically, if the county decided, they could also be billing multiple people. I just don't think that's what we're willing to pursue at this point. And then to your point of the best way to articulate how you would like it designed, that would be me just telling me, because I'm going to the weekly meetings where we're creating the application for this grant, which by creating the application and telling them how we're going to do it, that's designing how it's going to be done. So letting me know what the best way for you is probably the best way to do it.
Okay. Any other questions for Lena before we go to public comment?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Len.
Lena, there is put forward by CAL FIRE and RCD 10 years ago, a document which is called the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which was a joint project with Santa Cruz County. But the document has gotten little attention in the current discussions of activity, and it is giving a comprehensive look at the county as a whole. And the issuing agency of this grant sort of cites, for example, Santa Clara County as having a strong document there. So I'm just wondering if some mention of that, whether the person coming in might want to make reference to it or in some way be involved with it, could look into that area. And I guess that I'm supportive of what it's doing. So if you meet with a group that considers it, I guess I would ask whether you wanted to mention that document specifically.
I'm happy to mention that document specifically. I will say that our biggest issue so far has been reducing to the word limit that we have for this application. So if I try and add things, I may get in trouble, but I will bring that up at the next meeting.
And then I do understand from conversation with you that the projected reporting position of the document is in the Office of Emergency Services?
Correct.
Thank you. And what does that mean exactly? Do they look to the Office of Emergency Services people to give direction, or is it just a resting place for the person?
Mostly just a resting place with the most flexibility. We had talked about the Office of Sustainability, and we'd also talked about the Fire Safe Council, but it just seemed like over discussions that the Office of Emergency Services would just make the most sense for this position. It doesn't really change how that person functions because they're doing a new job that no one's done before. So it's going to be built up either way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from members of the council? All right, next we're going to go to public comment on this item. So if any member of the public would like to speak about this, please go ahead and raise your hand now. Okay, Lucy Wicks. Go ahead, Lucy, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Lucy Wicks, resident of El Granada. Really appreciate you all putting this letter together. I think that was the goal from the last meeting, as I understood it, was to really show the support of this. Wanted to comment on a couple of things. I think a bit of the letter sort of buries the critical need of what this coordinator could potentially achieve deeper within the letter. I'd love to see that sort of move up so it shows that rather than showing all of the wonderful work that we're currently doing, I want to be able to really have the letter lean into the opportunity that this coordinator might be able to add to the great efforts that are underway. So I think that really focusing on that coordination of many jurisdictional areas that I keep hearing within these meetings and really helping highlight that this coordinator position is a value add to helping enhance the coordination on the strategy, establishing that North Star for how we're really going to collectively navigate the many different ownership areas that fall within this really important topic area. So I just think that fourth paragraph, I'd love to see that really lifted a bit more so it really looks like we are asking because there is a need versus explaining all the really good work that's already underway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Lucy. Any other members of the public with comments? Okay, I don't see any other public comments, so we'll go back to the council. We'll just go around to everyone and have an opportunity. Everyone can have an opportunity to voice any comments, anything you'd like to see added or removed from the letter, and if you're in support of the letter, if you care to speak about that now. Anyone want to go first, or should I just call the roll? All right, I'm just going to go down the list then. I'll go to Claire first.
Like Greg, this is kind of what we've been looking for, to have something like this that we can turn to quickly and get out to support whatever we can get from whoever's giving away money. I'm sure that there could be things in here that could be tweaked. I think the most important thing for these applications is that something arrive. And I don't think anybody's going to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. They're just going to see that we're citing that there's a need and we're behind it. And I'm certainly glad that we have a tool like this that we can amend for future uses as well.
Great, thank you, Claire. Next, Dave.
I don't have anything, Dave.
Okay, I'll go to Len next.
I believe the comments made to date, I agree with. There is no more specific things I can see to add to it. And I think as has been commented, once a person is in place, they'll have to work with the organizations here to go down to the level of particulars. So I'm supportive, but no further comments.
Okay, and then Greg.
Well, if I knew Lena had drafted this, I would have ripped it to shreds, but I let it go. I do agree we could have made a stronger case on the unique need faced here in San Mateo County, but given the way the Brown Act works, and we can't all trade edits amongst each other before meetings, we're stuck either editing these things on the fly in a meeting or letting it go. And I think in the interest of timeliness and time for a long agenda, we let the letter go. And then Lena, next time, send it me directly and I'll rip it to shreds.
Okay, next, Jill.
I support the letter and I don't have any additional questions or comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. And lastly, Dan.
Support the letter and no additional comments.
Okay, and then I agree. I support the letter. I think I agree with everything that's really been said here tonight. That we could have made it. We could have put the time in to make it a little bit more customized and applicable to parts of the Midcoast. But I think we're all a little bit busy this week and weren't able to do it. The three of us that sort of reviewed this letter prior to the meeting. And like Greg said, other members couldn't review it prior to the meeting. So this is what we have. I'm going to put a motion on the table, which I should have done before, to approve the letter.
Second.
Okay, as secretary, I need one person to make the motion.
Can I be the one to make the motion?
Sure.
Okay, so I made the motion. I think I heard Greg second.
I seconded before she even finished.
Okay, motion's on the table and seconded. Dave, could you please call the roll?
Sure. Claire?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Len?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And I am also yes. It passes unanimously.
Okay, great. And I will send that to you, Lena, tomorrow after I remove the draft from it. So we thank you, everyone. That was very efficient. We're actually quite ahead of schedule now. And Kellix, who is supposed to be speaking on agenda item number 2, is not available until 8 p.m.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here early. Okay, great. I was going to propose we switch around the order of things, but since you are here, let's move on to agenda item. I said 2, it's 4B, which is a wildfire preparedness update. I think this agenda item is covering a few different topics, but the main topic that we want to cover tonight is the update on the El Granada and Quarry Park scoping project. And so that's what Calix will speak to. I think Len also has a few updates on things that he's been doing with regard to the Fire Safe Council, the El Granada medians eucalyptus removal project, which Alina actually spoke to initially. And then I know there are some efforts by local community members as well. And I think we have some members of the community that are here tonight to make some comments. So I'd like to get started by handing it over to Calix, who can talk a bit about this RFP that the Resource Conservation District, RCD, is putting together on a scoping project for El Granada. So Calix, welcome. Welcome back from your sabbatical.
Thank you.
And we're happy to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. May I also speak briefly about the project that started today, the fuel load reduction?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, it's great to be here. RFP, RCD, lots of acronyms. We could throw more at you. The two things that that Sheena asked me to join you tonight and report out to you while she takes a pass on tonight's meeting. One is the Quarry Park project that you've already heard about and you've heard her talk about in previous meetings. That's the shaded fuel break and hazardous tree removal along the fire roads. That's a $1 million project funded through the Coastal Conservancy. That project started today. So this part that started today is the 9 acres approximately of fuel reduction over the next 2 weeks near the entrance of the park. And then later this winter, we're going to be putting out a request for proposals, or RFP, to hire a contractor to do the remaining about 40 acres of that fuel break that will extend about 100 feet along each side of the fire roads, and also removing hazardous dead or dying eucalyptus about 200 feet on each side of the roads, covering about 100 acres total. And this project's going to be completed over 3 years, ending with this treatment applying to the new extension of the fire road that will be completed in the 3rd year. So that is an update on that project that started today. And then the scoping project that Michelle just referenced is the county has offered $75,000 through Measure K funds for us to be able to work with partners like Midcoast Community Council, CAL FIRE, county, to try to identify and scope effective projects for reducing the risk of wildfire in the area. So we completed a draft request for proposals that some of the project partners are reviewing. And it is basically for the selected consultant to complete background research and really site-specific investigations and work to develop a site-specific understanding of wildfire scenarios for El Granada and the surrounding community, and B, scope a suite of actions that would most effectively reduce those risks. And that would include operational considerations, constraints, opportunities, methods, detailed cost estimates, et cetera. And then we would have a list of projects or actions that people could either do instantly, or that we could then take for grant funding, or there might be other funding sources as well. Asking a consultant to do things, to identify projects, short-term, long-term, public land, private land, really not just, cherry pick from a list of everybody's ideas, but have it be really grounded in an understanding of what the risks and opportunities are. So the consultant would define the fire risk, like fire ecology, local fire history, fuel characteristics, fuels models, weather topography. Assess risk, looking at ignition, probability, fire behavior, potential fire spread, et cetera. And then develop a suite of potential actions that could be taken. Yeah, so if anybody has questions about that, I can do my best to answer it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kellex. Yeah, so we'll go around the council first with any questions for Kellex on this, starting with Greg.
Welcome back, Kellex. Fire code. One of the things that I and others have been going around with is the fact that we don't have a code that allows the fire department to do the same thing they can do on weed abatement for mature eucalyptus trees, especially on vacant lots. So I'm hopeful that this consultant can consider changes in the fire code. Can this consultant also consider revegetation? That is, I know it's expensive, but we can't just take the trees out. There's a lot of people who have commented on moisture in the soil and all the other things we want to take care of. So I hope they'll speak to that. Thirdly, to repeat a prior comment, I hope they will speak to a governance structure because we do seem to have a siloed approach here in San Mateo County. And I know we're not alone. I know there are a lot of other counties that have the same issues. So, and then finally, you didn't mention dollar cost damage.
Right.
As part of the metric.
That's right. So let me do those one at a time. So what was the first one?
Fire code.
Oh, okay. So the reason in the RFP that we said that we would want them to recommend an array of actions, and I intentionally didn't use the word projects, is because I want them to be able to consider things like policy changes or operations or, just things that aren't necessarily narrowly defined as projects to keep the world of opportunities really broad. And what was the second? You're on mute.
You put it in the chat. It was revegetation.
Oh, thank you. Revegetation, what we're going to be asking the consultant to do is to identify actions that can reduce the risk of wildfire. If revegetation reduced the risk of wildfire substantially, I imagine that they would make that recommendation. But I see revegetation more as minimizing, like would probably be a permit requirement, et cetera. Like it's just something that you do in how you develop a project rather than a standalone project that would be identified, probably is my best guess.
Could I just throw in a comment here? So my work with Ann and the LHMP, it turns out FEMA ranks funding for wildfire fuel reduction much lower than it does if the project's considered a permanent solution. So
well, yeah, but that's outside the scope.
Clarity.
So just to be clear, so what you're talking about comes in later, which is about funding strategy, right? And so there's a lot of things that might come in around funding strategy, like is this something that's dovetailed with habitat restoration and therefore eligible for habitat restoration funds? And some funding sources require something to be a capital improvement project. Others might be about community engagement. Some might need it to be permanent. Some might need it to be CEQA ready. There's so many things that might affect how a project is characterized or developed for a funding opportunity, but the consultant will be focusing on where is the risk and what is the best way to reduce that risk. And then from that, we would develop them addressing the kinds of things that you're talking about. Unless it turns out that a really significant way to reduce the risk is with some particular like vegetating, scenario. And then the third one, let me open up the chat. Methodology for fire risk money. Can you say what that was?
The dollar cost damage would seem to be part of a formula. In other words,
Oh.
it's how high the risk and how much damage is it going to do? Lives,
Yeah,
property.
Yeah, we explicitly said that quantification will not be required. That is a much bigger project, and this is $75,000 is generous, but it's not. This isn't a $250,000 project, so if that's a pretty significant exercise, some of that quantification. If it turns out that consultants, in the RFP, we say that we want them to, assess the risks or describe the risks, but we say quantification is not required. We'll see what people who bid on the project propose in their approach. If people can get further along quantification, that's certainly valuable to know. But I wouldn't have that. That could be a red herring, so that like all of their work, the money goes into just quantifying. Let's see, what was the next thing? Governance. So the governance is that this is a contractor that would be reporting to and under the.
What I mean is, will they speak to the governance structure required to do the job?
I see.
To manage the implementation of the programs.
I don't know, is the short answer. I mean, I'm not sure I know what you mean by governance, because some things probably would benefit from governance. Other things maybe are just a discrete project that an entity could do that doesn't require some governance structure. So if there's a project or a recommended action or a policy change or something like that, that would need some, particular type of stakeholder input or something like that, it would be our expectation that they would speak to that as they're describing the scope of the project. I would consider that part of essentially the operational aspects of the project. But not everything would require a governance structure. So I don't know, I wouldn't imagine that we would require that they have governance structure for something that doesn't require governance.
Does that answer your question, Greg?
No, but I decided not to make this into a big dialogue. We can cover it later.
Okay.
Sounds good. Other members of the council, do you have any clarifying questions for Kellex? Any questions, actually? Yeah, please go ahead, Jill.
Hi, Kellex. Thanks for coming. I have two questions. So will the RCD give the consultant a budget for the suites of actions? Or is it just like the sky's the limit?
Are we going to tell them a limit of what a cost would be of the ideas that they have? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, if they come out with a suite of actions, are you going to say, okay, we want you to develop a suite of actions, but those cannot, exceed $5 million?
No,
it's just, okay. My second question is, many of the Midcoast residents are asking how community members can provide direct input to the consultant during the scoping project for El Granada Quarry Park. Do you have a system set up or some idea of how that's going to work?
Yeah, two mechanisms. One is through the Midcoast Community Council, which is going to participate as a partner in this project. So make sure that you give your input here or to your representatives. And then the second is that we have asked let me find it. We've asked that it would require that the consultant participate in three meetings of the partners. The partners would include representatives from CAL FIRE, County Fire, San Mateo County, and the Midcoast Community Council. One would be an initial meeting to develop an understanding of stakeholder concerns. A second meeting to present the draft summary of their assessment findings, and a third meeting to present draft potential actions. So it's important that your representatives from the Midcoast Community Council are current with your concerns and interests and knowledge. And then the second is that we're going to have them present the final product, including the findings, assessment of risks, their suite of actions at a community public meeting. Furthermore, during their initial phase, when they're assessing wildfire risks, we explicitly said that we would want them to make use of local knowledge. So during that sort of information gathering phase, there are a number of people in this community who have a lot of history on this issue, or have done their own research, or have had ideas, and that would be part of the consultant's information gathering.
Thank you, Kellex.
Thank you. Next, I'll go to Len.
Yes, I've asked Dave to let me show a slide.
David, are you okay? Len, you're co-host now, so you should be able to share.
Gotcha. So, Kellex, can you see the slide I have up?
Yes.
So this is a slide of really the Midcoast area, highlighting areas where there are non-native eucalyptus stands. And in a circle surrounds basically Quarry Park, El Granada, some of the surrounding lands, certainly spilling into Miramar a little bit, and shows the density of the eucalyptus there. The question I have is, will the consultant in their project be able to consider two items that have been identified to the MCC in meetings? One was the problems of the eucalyptus in the medians of El Granada. So there's a first test project to do this and show us what it looks like. And presumably the action from the county could be, let's remove all of the eucalyptus on the medians. Second, in the forest of Quarry Park, there's obviously a large amount of acreage that is eucalyptus. We've had a representative from CAL FIRE both speak to the risk that's there, as well as the considerable cost to remove it, as well as that it's a very difficult revegetation process. Will the scope that the consultant looks at let us take the view, the long view, let's say a 20 to 30 year process, and if not to eliminate all the eucalyptus, do a major reduction within the circle, and by major, I truly major, which provides both time to digest it and look at the considerations of how would you do that. So is that the type of directive that could be given? I'm not saying that it should be, but I just want to understand if it includes that capability.
So what they are going to do is do their own professional, empirically based scientific assessment of risks. And from that, and the input they've received about, including a list, we put in the RFP, a list of projects that have been advanced by the community, including the ones that you've described. So they have that context, they'll have talked to people, they'll have known what are some of the project ideas that people have had. But they're going to make recommendations grounded in their expertise and scientific knowledge. Will they invest it? What we're not going to do is take a list of all the ideas and projects that people prefer and have them run it through a model. They're not like creating a model. They are assessing risk based on information that's readily accessible. If you wanted to do modeling, it's possible. If we get a consultant that says they can develop a model also for that amount of money, that's great. We'll see if they propose that. But what the scope of work isn't for them to take the preferred projects that have been identified by different stakeholders and run it through a model and identify their favorites. It's for them to take all this information about about where the risk is and where the potential is, and considering also all of these ideas that have come up from the community, like the medians, like full eradication of eucalyptus, like limbing versus what have you, and make an array of recommendations. And we said that they should be both short and long-term projects. So some things we can do now, some things that might be more ambitious. There's no limit in what they can recommend or identify as reducing the risk. We're not asking it to be constrained, so I want to know what is the best way to reduce the risk and how much does that cost? I also want to know if it turns out that that's a $200 million project, I also want to know what are other reasonably protective things that we can do in the short term, And I would imagine that the kinds of things that you've identified, Len, are things that they would consider, and they will inform us about whether those are the best projects to reduce risk.
So I'll take the answer as there's a study, and the answer could be yes to undertake that, given that the measures they bring together point that as a possibility. The specific CAL FIRE statement was that if you had a Diablo wind and the same type of lightning surge storm that hit the southern part of the county and were to come on top of our eucalyptus forest, we'd be in great trouble. On the other hand, that's not necessarily a likely convergence of events. And that's basically as far as he could go within his current level of study. So I take that as a credible point to investigate. And that's one of the things that our consultant could undertake. Not saying what the conclusion would be, but it can be considered.
Yeah, certainly. Absolutely.
Good enough.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. If you could go ahead and stop sharing, I'll go on to Dan Haggerty.
Yeah, thank you, Calix, tonight. Your update, I guess it was 4 weeks ago when we last met. I think Sheena was here. We were talking about brainstorming. There was some ideas she had. It seemed like the discussion has already started on different cost-saving measures, what to do with some of the logs, what to do with wood chips and such, potential creating biochar. There was a pretty good conversation. It seemed like she got it. So can you report on any further discussion in this area as far as how can we make sure we're getting the best bang for the dollar spent, for not only for the tax dollars, but just for getting the maximum fire reduction with every penny that we have here to spend?
I think that's essentially the purpose of this project, is to take it out of, is to ground this, is to make sure that solutions that are being advanced are being debated on their merits of being effective. In that, I think what these consultants can help us do is focus our conversation around what projects will be the most effective. That is the best use of funds. And instead of, right now there's, some of us have done internet research and some of us have talked to some experts here and there, and some of us have strong preferences or our own observations, and we've shared that in different groups and, different conversations. But what this will do is bring it all together under one tent, basically, so that we can make cost-effective investments that are the most likely to reduce the risks to the community.
So the consultant will be making the final decision, it sounds like?
No, the consultant isn't making decisions. The consultant is going to develop an array of actions for short and long-term on public and private lands that can be undertaken that are likely to, that will directly address the actual threat, the ones that the consultant thinks will work.
Okay, so the consultant aside, you've been doing some consulting with San Mateo County Parks, right? And so that project's already started. You're giving them, is that true? You giving them
The project that started today, that's,
yes.
Yeah, so that's the one, I mean, that project was identified a long time ago before this process.
Right, so what I was talking about use,
But you were talking about that project?
yes, I was.
Oh, okay. So you want to know how we're ensuring the best use of funds for that project?
Yeah, and best use of the material that's coming down, and yeah, yes.
I'm not sure how to answer that really. How we're ensuring the best use of the fund.
Well, there's been a long talk. I mean, it's been going on for like 6 months about ideas on how to, what to do with these logs, whether, use them as, benches in the meadows, or use them for retaining walls, or chip them all up, or turn them into biochar.
So that's a different question to me. So then, so that's, to me, I wasn't thinking that as like the best use of funds, but what to do with the biomass. And I don't know what the conversation is on that at this point.
Well, I think it's a good question because, trucking is a big expense. So yep. I don't know what the plan is. And I'm interested.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. It is a big expense. It's also a greenhouse emitter. So yeah, when we can reduce trucking, of course, it's always optimal.
Okay, well, maybe Nicholas someday can give us a little bit better report on how things are going to go about.
Sorry, I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'll go to Jill.
Sorry. When will the RFP be posted and where will it be posted?
The RFP will be released, I think it's September 15th. Let me check. Let's see, I think it's going to be September 13th or 15th, most likely. We'll certainly have it on our website. We'll send it around to partners. We will send it to the Midcoast Community Council and ask you all to distribute it as well and post it. The county will also distribute and post it, via email and websites and that sort of thing.
Okay, is it posted in any of the newspapers, local papers?
Yeah, we usually will send it. Well, actually, we usually send it to industry journals, but we could certainly send it to local newspapers. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Happy to do that. Yeah. Dan, I think Nicholas Calderon is actually here, and he might be able to answer your question from before.
Yeah, hey, Alex. Good evening, everyone. With regards to what is the best use of the material that is produced from these projects, the first use we want to consider is how to chip that up and use it for weed suppression and erosion control. And that's one of the first things we're going to do. And after that, we will likely have additional material on hand. And I think the question of what makes the most sense for that is something that we should be discussing. Like Kelly said, there's a lot of consideration that needs to go into that after we've already used it to help either mitigate erosion or help us with the long-term management of that area. We don't have a good solution for that. We, at one point, were able to ship it overseas to be used as a commodity, but that market has since dried up and is no longer available. So we have to consider different alternatives at this point, but we are open for all suggestions.
Okay, thank you, Nicholas, for that. Sorry about that. Okay. Yes, thank you for that response. Next, I wanted to go to Len. I think he had some updates to provide on the meetings with the California Fire Safe Council. And on a,
if this item
is
over, is this item over for me then? If so,
it's part of the same agenda item, but I think I wanted to just do that, and then I would go to public comment after that. If you need to run, you can go ahead, or you can wait around for public comment.
Yes. So today at the Fire Safe San Mateo County monthly meeting, virtually the entire meeting, except for reports, was devoted to a presentation by a group called Next 10. And it ran over 45 minutes of presentation as well as question and answer. And basically it was focusing on what's been learned relative to areas that are in the wildland urban interface, but have a density of housing somewhat similar to ours, and trying to examine a number of considerations relating to that. I won't try to summarize that at all, but I've talked to Fire Safe, and I expect to be able to post that video of that meeting presentation by tomorrow on our website. And I think it's worth everybody's listen to understand some of the things that's been learned to date in that area. So that wasn't a decision meeting, but it was very useful information shared, I think, especially to the residents of communities like El Granada, et cetera. The other thing, I mean, the work on the medians is underway. I've noticed it's, on observing it, their pace is somewhat slower than they projected initially, because the first time they tried it, and the mountain of chips is truly enormous, and there's still trees in the first area. The point is, I'm expecting from that, within either our next meeting or the meeting after, we'll be able to sort of recap what's been learned there and consider what kind of options it tells us about to consider for our community. So those are the two particular takeaways there. That's all I wanted to share at this point.
Okay, thank you, Len. And next I'm going to go, oh, Greg, yes, Greg, did you have an update that you wanted to give tonight as part of this wildfire group?
Well, I think some other people are aware of it, but it looks like Caltrans has started to take down, Dan, you called me today about this, the eucalyptus trees that I believe we all complained about. I know I filed tickets with Caltrans on Frenchman's Creek and Medio Creek. Dan, you want to speak to what you saw? They're actually doing some.
Yeah, well, so there's a culvert underneath, and on the east side of the culvert at Medio Creek, there's a giant, well, I guess it's when they're starting to attack, giant eucalyptus tree right dead on top of the culvert. So they're working on that. There's another tree next to it that has some white X's painted on it. As I was riding my bike south, I passed by Frenchman's Creek, and I saw a number of trees that are also marked, it looks like, to be removed. And it is, I can say that it looks like it's all within 10 feet of Highway 1. I think the responsibility is, well, I don't know. The only trees I saw with white crosses on them were relatively close to the road, maybe within 15 feet. And that's all I saw. So that's all I can report right now.
Thank you. Len, you have your hand raised. Did you want to say something else?
I guess a question I wanted to pass to Lena. In the area at Medio Creek Dan is talking about are a number of eucalyptus scheduled for removal for the coastal trail. And I know that's been a project somewhat delayed. So I guess I would ask Lena whether she knows whether any tree removal for that project was intended to be undertaken right away, and I do not know whether that would therefore involve what Caltrans is doing.
All I know about the Caltrans project, I got from Denise Ania from the Fire Safe Council. So I've been playing a little bit of telephone. I would need to get some more information from her because I have very limited information on this project.
What I'm talking about, Lena, is the work being done for the multimodal trail.
Yeah, for the multimodal trail, I have a thought, but I don't want to say anything so I could be incorrect. I'd need to double check.
Okay, so that's all I had to contribute now, but.
Okay, thank you, Len. Next, I'm going to go to members of the public for comment. I'm going to start with Melinda McNaughton, who has her hand raised. So go ahead, Melinda, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So my question is, because I didn't get a chance to ask Kellex before she had to go, does anybody know if there's a plan with the county to revegetate or restore, replant the medians so that we can again have a shade canopy that is being taken away?
Lena, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so within the budget from the county, there is no money for revegetation. So in that sense, there is not a plan. The county is supportive of some form of revegetation. We just don't have a plan in process. And we're happy to work with the community and or community groups if anyone wants to kind of step up and help us out with that.
So my question then is, has the RCD been invited to help with that? Because I know they can try and secure funding for things like that, and also other organizations like the Greenbelt Alliance.
The RCD is aware of this project. I don't think an official ask has ever been made to the RCD to participate in it.
Okay, so they haven't asked them to do it. So how do we get them to ask them to help with this?
I could speak to that, Michelle.
Yes, go ahead, Len.
When the project was first announced by the county, we made an explicit request to have some funds allocated to looking at revegetation, and were explicitly turned down that this was only to do the removal. So that was a very hard line drawn. Supervisor Horsley indicated he was willing to work with a local agency such as GCSD that might want to get involved in that issue, but at this point, their priorities aren't there as well. And I'm not to speak for RCD, but this is within the community area itself, so they don't directly do those projects, so they would look for funding from it. So I think that would fall in the category of things that the project Michelle or that Kellex was speaking to could consider it in that vein, but nothing's done more immediately. I expect to bring to the MCC as they finish this project a question to the community of what we can do, and that would be either the next meeting or the first meeting in October to look at that issue. But there's nothing on the books now.
Okay, so it's clear that the county isn't going to fund it, but I know there's other organizations that can secure funding from different places besides the county to help with that. So that's why I was thinking if they could invite the RCD, they may be able to help with that. I think it's an important thing to continue to look at, and I hope that the council will continue to try and search out ways to do that. And I would like to be able to help with that. So if I find out anything, I'll let you guys know too. But we do have the California 30 by 30 proposition that's pending, where the state has been given a lot of federal funds to preserve California coastline and to find nature-based solutions to climate change. And maybe there's some possible funding there for this kind of a thing. Maybe funding from the state.
Okay, that's a great idea. Thank you, Melinda. We can look into that.
Okay.
If you have any more information on that you can send to the council, you can always email midcoastcommunitycouncil@gmail.com.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, next I'll go to Sherry Daly. Or Cherie.
Thank you. I want to speak. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I totally support what Melinda was speaking to. I live on Coronado, and so we're already experiencing the changes on the medians and hoping that they will be replanted, and some of the forest husbandry that is lacking in the area might be considered. But I also wanted to speak to, and I know that I missed out, I was unable to get in earlier about the lighting at the fire station. And
we can't talk about that during this section, unfortunately.
We can't.
No, the comments on this agenda item really need to be relevant to fire and fire preparedness.
Even though it's the fire station.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little different. If you would like, we have the chat function. Feel free to go ahead and put your comment in the chat. You can post a comment there and I'll read that.
Okay, so right now I need to focus specifically on the median project that has...
Not on the medians, but on wildfire preparedness. If you have a comment on the medians, that would certainly fall under that.
Okay. Well, I guess that my husband and I both question the fact that the medians are being cleaned up, but around us, the Quarry Park and the upper regions of El Granada still are totally forested with the trees, and the medians do provide us with a beauty when we're walking, and shade, as Melinda had, and habitat for the fox, the birds, the hawks, and everything else. I mean, it's we're a little bit concerned about what the future looks like in El Granada. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, I'm going to go to Keith Mangold. And for those of you who don't know, Keith Mangold has been very active in the community of El Granada and has put together a petition and gotten over 450 signatures, a petition about to the Board of Supervisors on Quarry Park and the risks the wildfire risk associated with it. So Keith requested to speak tonight, and I'm going to have him speak for up to 3 minutes.
Yes. Fairway already had his hand up, I think.
Yeah, but Keith's going to go. I mean, it doesn't really matter the order. I just was communicating directly with Keith, and he had indicated that he wanted to speak. He hadn't raised his hand. We can certainly get to both of them. Keith, are you ready, or should we go to Danny? Keith?
Hello.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Originally, I had hoped to address the group with the petition and the tabling effort and a little background. But as it turned out, we couldn't make an agenda item. So this really is just a request to be put on the agenda for the next meeting, so we could actually do a presentation and go through the results of the petition and request that the board approve it and council approve it and pass it on to the board. So I'm not quite sure of the mechanics of that, but you know, what I'm asking for, I guess, is sponsorship for an agenda item for the next meeting.
Okay, we can talk about that during future agendas. We can talk about we have a lot of competing agenda items for future meetings, so we could talk about whether that can fit under one of the, in one of the upcoming meetings. Is there anything else you want to say right now, though, about the petition?
Well, just very shortly, it was kind of a originally it was an attempt to see what the community approval rate would be for something like that. And it wasn't really intended to be gathering that many signatures, but the response was so overwhelming that we decided to go ahead and open it up and collect more signatures. And as I had stated before, we got over 450 signatures, and the ratio was probably about 95% plus to 5% of the people who opposed. And I was pretty amazed at that. I thought it would be much, much less than that. And so, you know, I'd really look forward to the opportunity to talk to you all and present the petition and the background materials, and hopefully for communication of the board through you. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Danny, did you still want to speak?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of quick thoughts. First off, thanks for putting me behind Keith. Big thanks to Keith for gathering the signatures. On the medians, as far as clear cutting too large of a swath to be palatable, I just encourage whoever makes the decision to consider basically staggering the cuts and replantings. If there's any funding issue that'll make it take many, many years or several years at least, cut 100 to 200 yard chunks at a time with intervals left standing. If we get some trees planted and growing in the intervals by the time we cut the rest of the eucalyptus, basically it avoids the clear cut of any given median at any given year. The other thing, just from the disposal standpoint, as a homeowner that's gotten the permit and taken out the eucalyptus and had the bids, I have to agree with the cost of the removal of logs being a significant issue. It's maybe 20% of a bid for large trees. And actually, it would be more for the thicker, medium-sized trees that I see. I strongly urge the powers that be to just find a way, if at all possible, to give a per homeowner or per plot rebate for dumping of those logs. I don't know if it would be a retail dumping site locally or something that could be lined up with other private vendors, but basically, yeah, that's my thought on that. Find a way. I would encourage more than just the homeowners, even the empty plot owners. If they've got the eucalyptus standing, find a way to discount $1,000, $2,000 per plot. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Any other members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? Okay, I don't see any. So I'll go back to the council for one last round of comments. Thoughts on anything we've discussed tonight or any next steps? Please raise your hand if you'd like to go first, or I will go in reverse order. Let's do that then, starting with Dan.
So, the agenda item was labeled to be an update, and I don't really have a whole. I mean, and the desired outcome is informational. There were some few things mentioned. I could go into some long comments. I'd rather wait and see I'd like to see the petition. I'd like to say that I have some support to have that on the agenda as soon as possible. Support everything that Keith is doing. And yeah, I guess I'm a little disappointed that it looks like, there's nothing really thought about on saving money and minimizing trucking out logs. There wasn't much information at all given, what they're going to do, how much they're going to chip, what's got to be hauled off. So I just plan to go up there and kind of monitor a little bit, and hopefully they're going to document with some photographs before and after. And I just wish that there was more information written down on how they're going to go about it. And I'm just not seeing that. So that's all I got to say. I'll just pass it on.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'll go to Jill.
Thanks, Keith. What is the title of the petition? Keith? Uh-oh, you're muted. Oh, well. That's the only question I had.
The petition, well, give me a second to find it and I'll read it to you. On second thought, basically, it's a petition to the Board of Supervisors to remove the mature eucalyptus canopy from Quarry Park. And there's a little information about the fact that it's been done very effectively by the park systems in the East Bay Hills, and that's probably a model for what we'd like to see here. It's not about clear cutting, or it certainly isn't getting in a disposal. It's if the canopy can be reduced somehow by fire breaks or whatever that is deemed by the experts to be sufficient, all of that is certainly a possibility. And I'll send everybody the petition later.
Okay, thank you. And Greg, I'll note just that Greg put in the comments, Quarry Park Threat Petition was the title at the top of the petition. Okay, and reminder, these are comments on everything that we've heard tonight regarding wildfire, aside from the grant opportunity letter of support that was in agenda item 4A. Okay, so I'll continue going around. Greg, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Okay, Len?
So when we first had this item coming up on our agenda for today, we had hoped that the RFP itself would be released both to our subcommittee as well as to the council itself, but neither of those has happened. We did today get a chance to, Michelle, Greg, and myself, to look at that, but we're not at liberty to talk about any of the details there. Not that Kellogg's covered well the thrust of it, and I think in the major points she made. So for example, with what Keith is bringing forward, I think that's very helpful to gauge public thought about that. But I think what she's indicating is that the consultant will be tasked to further explore wildfire behavior, to give it a broad label and bring forward points of known science or what's under investigation to clarify the framework there. So that's something we can expect to happen. The process will occur from the RFP very quickly. By the time the MCC meets again, it will have been distributed to the public and people will be working on responses. And by the time we have our first meeting in October, the consultant should be selected. So I think that part is moving quickly. And I think there will be a framework for input both at the community level and then to a group of people who will meet directly with the consultant, as well as other activities a consultant may take on. So I think all of that can be looked at a little bit more, particularly at our next meeting and in the meeting after the major pieces will be in place. I think as far as Quarry Park goes, I mean, major proposals there, considerations, really fall under things that this this effort will look at in a broad level to frame it. And so I look forward to considering what Keith brings forward. And I think it's an important effort, but we've heard that their goal is to take all of those thoughts and then try to categorize them and evaluate them. As far as the medians, this is much more specific. That is, the county really spent $500,000 out of pocket, so to speak, to get this done and move forward in a first step. And really, they've left the next step up to the community at this point. So in the next 2 meetings, I expect we'll see both the wrap up of what was done, what was learned there, and have a chance to comment on our thoughts from the community perspective on next steps on the median, which is a little bit different than the situation with respect to Quarry Park. So those are the things I'm looking forward to near term.
Okay, thank you, Len. Dave, did you have anything?
No.
Okay, and Claire?
No.
All right, so that will close out this agenda item 4B. Next, we're going to move on to hybrid meetings, agenda item 4C. I'll hand it over to you, Dave.
Okay, so Jill was clearly thinking about this in her earlier questions. I really don't have a lot to add to what I've discussed at earlier meetings, except that at the MWSD meeting last week, their attorney reminded the MWSD board that they will need to go back to in-person meetings of some kind, that there are 2 bills in the Assembly that could have some effect on that. One basically would change to be to the current setup under the executive order. Another one was a much lower key that would leave some choices up to local boards and other elected bodies. So the one concrete thing for this item is to actually approve funds to buy the materials I discussed at earlier meetings. That is a couple of Bluetooth speakers and a monitor so that we can see remote audiences. And I will remind people that under the current Brown Act, some of which would be changed by the other bills, anybody on the council who is attending the meeting from their home has to publish their home location and allow other people to attend there, or some other location where public can attend if they don't want to do that from their home. And of course, almost nobody does. And certainly that's being considered in possible action in the future, is that if an elected member is attending from their home, that they do not have to publicize their home address and allow people to attend at their home for obvious reasons. With that said, and I checked again today, I think the additional change before October 1st, or more importantly, before our first October meeting. And I see in chat somebody asked about the bills. I had written them down, but unfortunately deleted the file, so I would have to go back to the MWSD video to find that. So the real questions here are, one, is everybody willing to attend in person? And I've already heard a number of opinions on that at earlier meetings. We should definitely have everybody on the council say yes or no. And second, if the answer is no, do you have some location that you can attend where members of the public can attend other than your home. And of course, anybody else respect the hybrid or in-person meetings is completely kosher on this agenda item. But I would like to ask for a motion to approve the expense to buy the monitor and the Bluetooth speakers before we start that discussion. We don't have to vote on it, but I would like the motion on the floor.
I make a motion that we purchase those items.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Len.
Okay, thank you for that context, Dave. I'll now go around to the other members of the MCC for to weigh in on whether they would be available to attend and whether they would approve these expenses. So, Clara, you had your hand raised. So I can start with you.
I just wanted a clarification. The issue of being at your house and having everybody come on over to join in the meeting, would that be in any way influenced by the fact that we might have a genuine hybrid meeting where several people would be at the El Granada meeting place and other people would be Zooming in?
Not under current Brown Act law, under some of the possible changes being discussed in the Assembly, yes.
Yes, what?
Yeah, yes, it would affect it, but that has not yet happened. And given that we are at September 9th, the odds of it making it all the way through the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor before our first October meeting do not seem to be very high.
Well, why did another point, why did Harvey say that they were going to start looking at hybrid meetings in November?
We can't hear you clearly, Dave. You're very quiet. Now we can.
Interesting. I would guess that was a slip of his tongue that he meant for October.
Okay. The other thing I think they may be waiting for is to see who the governor is.
That is potentially an impact.
Okay.
We won't know that probably for sure until after October either. Unless it's a landslide one way or the other.
Okay. That was a good point to ask for clarifying questions. And I do, in fact, have a clarifying question. So is there anything to prevent the existing governor from amending or issuing a new executive order that will extend this virtual meeting situation beyond the end of September?
He had said he was not going to extend the state of emergency past October 1st. And if he does not, then he would not have the authority to do that. If he does decide to extend it, and given COVID statistics, I would not be terribly surprised if he extended it. Then yes, he could issue another executive order or basically which could be either identical to the current one or different in some respect.
Okay, thank you. Greg, did you have a question?
I think you just asked my question. My question is, why doesn't he just extend the executive order? And I guess there's politics. He doesn't want to be seen doing something that sounds like a mandate because he's already under fire from some areas of the state for being too mandatey, I guess. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, so maybe after September 14th, is it? Okay.
I'm going to back up and I'm going to add one thing because of a question that was in the chat, and I probably should have made this clearer up front. We do not have the ability to transcend what the existing Brown Act states as requirements for elected body meetings. We would be liable, we would actually be guilty of breaking the law if we decided that we were just going to go our own way.
So if we have a hybrid meeting and I don't let anyone in my house, I'll be breaking the law. Okay. All right. Let's go around. Who else has a comment? I mean, I'll just start. I really don't want to do an in-person meeting. I feel that it's highly risky given the current state of COVID case rates. If we do, we'll definitely, we'll all be wearing masks, which is fine, but it may make for complicated meeting, and I think it's risky. I have 2 young kids at home who are not vaccinated, and I do not want to, even though I'm fully vaccinated, I don't really want to be in a place where indoors. I have avoided that basically. So I really strongly hope that something changes. Either the governor issues a new executive order or something gets through the assembly, because I do not want to. I don't think it's safe for us to be having in-person meetings, especially in such a small building. And we know how crowded that gets if a lot of people show up. Who else would like to
would be required under current county rules.
Yes. We'll have a bouncer at the door. Okay. I'll just go around then. We already heard from Claire.
No, I didn't say what.
Oh, you went? No. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Claire.
Okay, no, I do not want to go. I do not want to do this in person. So I'm with you.
Okay, Dave?
I seem to be an outlier, but I am willing to have in-person meetings with some care, windows open, wearing coats, etc. But in fact, I would like to have in-person meetings again. Other than that, I won't say anything else at this point.
Okay. Len?
You're on mute, Len.
You're on mute, Len.
Thank you. Just to clarify, does a hybrid meeting require to have a quorum at the on-site place or just a certain number?
It has to be a quorum, so 4 would have to be there in person.
Yeah, so I mean, if that's a requirement, I would go to the on-site meeting. So that's at least 2. All we need is 4. And I'm been waiting to see what else happens.
Okay. Greg?
Oh, I'd love to have in-person meetings, and I'd even bring cookies, but it's not safe. And I think some of you know I've become an amateur COVID researcher the last 2 years, written a lot of articles about this. I can talk at great length about how the mask is not a perfect protection in an enclosed space. And my wife has MS and Parkinson's, so I'm not going to do it. And I don't know what the other shoe that's going to drop is going to be, but even with a booster shot, the case rate's got to be a lot better than it is right now for me to attend.
Yeah. But just one quick comment to interject. So if we had a hybrid meeting, I'm assuming that the 6-foot spacing would apply as well. So our seating capacity would be very limited. And I don't know that we're required to have more than we can provide with safety.
That is pretty hard. If you noticed, I put it in the chat to ask people if they would attend tonight if we were in person. And nobody except you, Len, said they would.
No, Dave has.
Yeah, and there is no requirement on having a fixed number, fixed percentage, anything else that you public to attend. So yes, we could space the chairs out 6 feet apart, and however many that is, my guess is 6 or 7 could be it for the public in person.
That would be pretty strange.
No, we often have 6 or 7.
Not on Zoom.
Exactly.
Yeah. And to be clear, when I say I'd like to go back to in-person meetings, I absolutely support hybrid meetings continuing with Zoom. That's why I put it in that request.
I agree with that perspective as well. I think that should be the way of the future.
Totally agree that we would offer a hybrid ability for anyone to join. I think the biggest challenge here is getting 4 of us to be there in person, because so far we have 2. I'll go to Jill. I think I already know what she's going to say.
Oh, really? What am I going to say?
I don't think you want to be there in person either, do you?
Okay, so I also do not want to attend in person right now. And I really like the Zooms. I think we have better attendance, not just from council members, but from our co-siders. And I think they're more efficient. I think they're safer. I think there's no limitation on how many people we can have. I mean, you know, in general. And I also have family members that are immunocompromised and cannot be vaccinated. And I have a lot of little children in my family, and I don't want to get infected and infect somebody I love. So I'm vaccinated, but I don't want to live with the guilt of infecting somebody I love. So I would say no for now.
Thank you, Jill. And last we'll go to Dan.
Yeah, I agree with you, Michelle, and others, Greg. It's not safe. You know, with all the news reports about surges up and down, you know, I just, you know, I don't think that we've got satisfactory information from the state. You know, I don't know. I don't even know if I'd want to listen to the county council. What's his name? Tim Fox. I'm not, you know, I just, you know, I remember, you know, this whole thing puts me back in my childhood when my father would say many times, I'll never forget this, you know, if somebody told you to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, you know, would you do that? If someone told you to do that, would you jump off the Golden Gate Bridge? So I feel like I'm in that position right now. Certainly, you know, if it could be proven to be safe, I'm totally open to some hybrid meeting, whatever that is, whatever that would look like. But I don't think we're in a position to act too fast on this. I would look to other districts, how other districts are operating, you know, other districts that are, you know, confined to the Brown Act. And I'm sure there's probably some solutions. Not that we should rush into modeling or following any other, but we should start talking about it and see if it fits for our community. But yeah, I'm not ready to rush into jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Thanks for that, Dan. Okay, so it sounds like we have 2 people who are willing to attend in person and pretty much 5 who won't. I see a couple of comments in chat, and I do want to give members of the public an opportunity to speak here. So if you would like to speak as a member of the public, please raise your hand. One of the comments, which I think is pretty interesting, well, is by Karen. So Karen just raised her hand. Let me let Karen say it out loud. So go ahead, Karen.
Before we do, I'd like to one wrap up from the council.
We're going to go back to the council.
Very good.
It just occurred to me, but then of course you have your meetings in the evening, which makes it a little more difficult to meet outside, but I'm serve on a board as well. And we've been meeting via Zoom, and I have to say, I agree with everything that was said. We find it more efficient. More of our members can attend without having to leave their homes, and it's safer right now. That we certainly appreciate all that you are doing to serve the community. And I just want to say, I hope you can find a middle ground that keeps you legal, but also keeps you safe.
Great, thank you for that, Karen. Yeah, and just to amend what I was saying before, I would be willing to meet outdoors, but we don't currently have a location outdoors. I mean, maybe it's something we could work on. If it gets to the next meeting on the 22nd and we still haven't heard any updates from the government, the state government about, you know, I think that could be a potential option to pursue, even if it meant starting our meetings a little bit earlier. it's something I would be much more likely to attend a meeting outdoors than in our existing meeting room in El Granada.
Michelle,
we did discuss that, and the problem is twofold: lack of power, and not everybody has a laptop that'll go for 4 hours, and lack of cover and shielding from the wind. If you've ever tried to hold a Zoom meeting in the wind, it's a pretty unpleasant experience for everybody listening. And of course, we are hoping for rain. So those are all real issues with outdoor.
Good. Yeah, could we complete the public comment so we can come back?
Yeah, do any other members of the public want to speak on this topic?
Okay.
I don't see any other hands raised, so go ahead, Len.
Okay, well, assuming we come back to the council, I guess the point I want to raise is do you know, Dave, is the definition of hybrid require a quorum, or can it be mandated? Can it be set up less?
I think it's pretty certain that anything that goes forward will still require a quorum to be in the meeting, whether they're physically present or remotely.
No, that's what I mean. That it doesn't have to be a quorum physically together, just somebody. Or some. Is it? Let's say it's just you and me, and the others want to attend remotely. Does that satisfy the hybrid requirement?
Yeah, if we have 4 people total between physical and remote in a hybrid meeting, maybe all remote. Just to say, for the sake of argument, all 4 of them are remote, and you're in a hybrid meeting scenario. We have 7 people on the council. That would still meet the Brown Act quorum requirements.
Okay, so based on the polling we did, then we're good to go.
Yeah, the only complexity is that we have to post the locations that we're all attending from, those of us who are attending remotely.
And they have to be it actually has to be done early. It has to be in the agenda so that people have a chance to attend at that location.
Can we just get assurance from members of the public that they're not going to show up at their houses? And then
well, even publishing everybody's home address, I'm sure there are people who would not want to do that. We could conceivably find other locations where people could meet, but I'm sure they would be semi-public, so they would have the same problem. Yeah, I don't think that will solve our problem. There is one other thing we can do, which is we can just cancel meetings until it is safe to meet in person. That is a viable option. I'm not suggesting it's a desirable option.
But my point bringing this up now is, having polled ourselves and had the discussion, I think we're in a position to say we're able to hold hybrid meetings if required. And that's all I want to see is put forward, no specifics. And I certainly expect that our wonderful Midcoast community would not want to flock to our homes, even in 1s or 2s, that they'd be online. So I'm good with that. And so I'm looking to Lena to carry that information forward.
Lena's showing up at Greg's house. She already put that in chat. Okay, so Michelle Dragoni, you're a little bit late, but I'll let you speak if you wanted to make a public comment. Nope. Okay, she put her hand down. Claire?
I'm slightly confused because it's what exactly, wait a minute. I was getting messages on the screen here. What are we doing right now? Is this a hybrid meeting by definition?
This would be a form of a hybrid meeting. The definition I was trying to use, and which I think most people use when they say hybrid meeting, is at least one council member is in a quote unquote meeting room where the public can attend. So by that definition, this is not a hybrid meeting. by other definitions, yes, this is a hybrid meeting.
Okay. I don't really care if somebody wants to sit in the living room with me. It's fine with me. What I do care about is, you see all this stuff on the news of people intimidating school board members and stuff like that. I don't want to get into a thing like that. And I think we're opening ourselves to that if we do this. If we post here's where we are, come get us. Not that anyone on the coast side would do that, but there's something like the internet. So I don't know. It might come down to we all resign. It might come down to we don't meet. I don't want that to happen now. So
nothing we said so far suggests we have to do that yet.
Yeah, I'm just catastrophizing.
Yeah, no, it's worth considering those scenarios. Not planning on them, but considering them.
Consider them considered.
Okay, so I feel like let's have the vote to approve the expenses. It's worth planning for this, regardless of what happens. If we haven't heard anything by the next meeting, I think we're going to have a serious consideration of what to do next. But hopefully by the 22nd, we'll have some executive action that puts us in a safer scenario going forward.
So I thought from the survey we did, we heard Dave and me say we would go to a meeting in our public office. We would set up 6-foot spacing, etc. And that gets us in that door. And that's as far as I think.
Yeah, that's only 2 people though. The rest of us don't want to publish our home addresses or show up.
And so we should bring that point up as well. So this is so that people know and the county knows what we can and can't do. And I think the point of addresses is perfectly reasonable for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the meantime, I'll follow up with Tim Fox. Dave and I had reached out to him earlier on in the summer, and he was very confident that some sort of order would take place, either an executive order or something would make its way through the state assembly and Senate. So I'll reach out to him again and give you guys an update at the next meeting to see if he has any insight into what may happen. And I'll also ask questions about, just to be sure that it is okay that only that not a quorum meet in the actual physical location, and then ask him what he thinks we would do about, us not wanting to publish the locations from which the rest of us are attending. Okay, Greg?
I just wondered if Dave didn't hit on something. I mean, we had the mass resignation, how do you say it? Catastrophization or whatever Claire put it forth. Dave suggested we cancel all the meetings. Can we hold meetings that are not official meetings? Can we hold a series of retreats, but not call them official? I don't know. But I do think we have to buy we have to buy the equipment because someday hybrid meetings are going to be actually desirable, right?
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so let's take a vote on that. This vote is to approve up to $350 in expenditures for equipment that will be used in the future at some point for hybrid meetings. Dave, please call the roll.
Claire.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Jill.
Yes.
Len. Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
And I'm also yes, it passes unanimously.
Great. Okay. All right, more to come on this. We'll close out this item for tonight, though. I want to move on to council activity, item 5. So members of the council, if you attended any meetings or have any updates on any item not on tonight's agenda, go ahead. I'll start with Greg.
So there are two topics that I think the community should be aware of. One is the number of sewage violations that Sam has had. You've heard this talked about. I'm told, but I haven't seen an official report, that August was much better. The Sewer Authority has met with a bunch of brewers and distillers, and they really don't know the source yet. There's a lot of theories floating around. I think we'll have a lot more concrete things to say shortly. But one concrete thing is we are headed toward $2 million of extra expense between all the extra testing and equipment that's been purchased. And there's a lot more I could say, but if you catch anybody opening a manhole cover and you don't own a gun, at least call the police. If you do own a gun, I'll leave it up to you. On Montera's Water District, they accepted Big Wave's donation of this $880,000 1 mile water main extension. It really was a bargain that the developer got. It's more like $1 million something pipe. But they accepted the pipe so that construction can begin on Big Wave with a 1-year warranty in a tsunami and earthquake zone. And they presented no analysis whatsoever for the increased cost of operating, maintaining, and replenishing the asset. There was, after I brought this up, some board members saying, well, they're going to have to help pay for the bond because they'll get a parcel tax, or, you know, that growth is going to help pay for itself. But there's no financial analysis that they've done. And I bring this up because it happens in every community that the developer donates infrastructure and then runs away and leaves the community to pick up the long-term perpetual costs. So expect to see more of this both at MWSD when they have to think through the connection fees. And I would say if you're a ratepayer and anybody wants to connect to your infrastructure and it's more than a normal house sewer lateral or simple service line, you really ought to raise a concern because it is ending up costing you money, and it's going on now. All right, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Anyone else on the council who would like to give an update?
I would.
Okay, go ahead, Len.
Thank you. So we have been in communication with Caltrans regarding the Virginia Avenue crosswalk. The issues they were having with PG&E have been resolved. They have additional utility issues with some underground cable, and they're basically working that issue. So we're waiting to hear from them, hopefully by our next meeting, when they hope to have the project done. I distributed to the council a little PowerPoint to review what was presented to us last November and the current status. And if there are any questions, I can take those. Okay, then Caltrans has been in touch with us to say that later this month, they're going to hold a briefing with different agencies on the coast to talk about the rehabilitation shop project that will deal with State 1 from south of Half Moon Bay up to the south border of Moss Beach. This will be the conceptual phase, if you will, to review what they're considering. This is an expensive $30 to $40 million project that would not actually be executed till 25, 26. But it's at this point that particular points can be brought up for review. So we're in a critical window for that. And that meeting will happen later this month. And then Michelle and I will attend and we can give what we've learned from that meeting. In addition, we had an update on Connect the Coast Side.
Sorry, Len, could you repeat what you just, the very first part of your announcement, what you just, before you go into the Connect the Coast Side?
Right. Did you not hear what I said?
I didn't hear the first part. Could you repeat just the very first part?
Sure. I sent a PowerPoint to all members of the council with a quick summary of the project.
You're talking about the crossing?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, just to sort of update what was covered last November.
I got that, but okay. There was something just immediately before I asked you, you said something different. I don't think it was about, I thought you were finished with the.
That was done with the Virginia.
About Caltrans. I think it was, Dan is probably asking about the other Caltrans project.
Yeah, what other Caltrans project are you talking about?
This is one of their, what they call their shop projects. These are sort of major maintenance projects they do on all their highways.
What is it? Where?
No, I just said you. So that project, the phase of the project that's relevant for us is one that's in its design phase. And that will deal with State Route 1 from south of Half Moon Bay to the southern border of Moss Beach. And that basically it's a long process that they go through with both basically design and concepts, going through all the particulars. And our particular involvement is an update meeting that they will provide us later this month. We'll attend with members of other groups within the county.
So it sounds like they're going to completely ignore the 10-year mobility study that the community participated in. That's kind of what it sounds like.
No, our goal is to see that this particular project does the things that we would like. Most particularly, it's an opportunity to ensure that a Class 2 bicycle lane is completed through that entire stretch. And there may be certain intersections where things might be done. But basically, there's a separate project that they are beginning for the Moss Beach corridor, and they will bring to our next meeting a request for a letter of support for project initiation activity on that stretch of Highway 1. So that's the other point that was discussed.
Okay. Is there any written documentation of what they're planning that you can share with the community and the council?
Well, there are two parts here.
Pretty much summarize what
there are two parts, Dan. Two parts. One is, and they're completely separate from each other. One is the maintenance project on the highway that is basically a 3 or 4 year process, and we're being briefed on what its scope is and some of the particulars. The second is within the framework of Connect the Coast Side, a project initiation document, which is a document that has to be filed with Caltrans to look at particular activities in what we refer to as the Moss Beach corridor. And that'll be brought to MCC for considering a letter of support at our next meeting.
I just want to make sure that there's documentation going on that the community could look at and reference instead of just having everything thrown at us in one night and not being prepared.
No, we're just telling you things that are coming up that'll provide more information. There's a flyer for the one meeting and just a verbal update. So what we would expect to see is the letter at our next meeting.
Okay.
For the Moss Beach corridor. So that's what I got there.
Okay. If members of the public have questions, please put them in chat. One, I do see that Lucy put a question about SHOP. It's SHOP, S-H-O-P project.
Yes, S-H-O-P-P, yeah.
P-P, sorry. Okay, I was going to give a quick update. Oh, Dave is talking, but he's on mute.
It stands for State Highway something something project.
Okay. All right, I was going to give a quick update on the website. So a group of 3 of us have been working, as well as with Lisa Ketchum, on the website upgrade and just the initial scope of that project, which was approved at our last MCC meeting. And I just have a quick update on that. So we worked with a consultant named Robin Graham, who was able to do some research. The first thing that she did was she enabled SSL, so made our website secure, which is nice. So that is currently enabled. And you never get that error on our website anymore saying it's not secure. She tested an export to export all of our content from the site over to Squarespace, and it worked, which was great news. She also tested a plugin that would have transferred all the existing images over, and that initial plugin didn't work. But she was able to basically figure out that she did some testing and was able to develop a successful transfer method to the site. So instead of taking thousands of hours She thinks it will actually take between 8 and 12 hours, which is really great news. So that it would be to like just basically move everything on the existing site over. There would be some errors in terms of images, the site locations of the different files. So we'd have to figure out how to do that. And then she also did a project to analyze the different storage solutions. So the group of us haven't had a chance to review that part of the project yet, but we're going to have a meeting and probably next week to go through that. And then at one of our future MCC meetings, we'll have the upgrade the upgrade on the agenda before we do any additional work on it. Okay. And then I think Greg had another update he wanted to give on Comcast.
Oh, I don't know if you saw the email. I and several other people here probably had written Comcast about the outage and the lack of redundancy. And they replied this week, at least to me, and I'm not sure who else was, were you all copied on it? That they're not going to be able to do anything. Now, I bring this up for a distant agenda item. Do we want to consider forming our own internet utility out here on the coast? And that would probably have to involve Half Moon Bay and whatever. But I have to raise it because internet connectivity is a backbone of our disaster and evacuation capabilities. And I do think we have a vulnerability that Comcast is not going to invest in fixing. So just for your information down the road, you know, consider we could all save money on our home internet connections, but it would take some work.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Any other council member updates? Oh, I was going to give another update. Sorry, I forgot. I had a meeting with our state senator, Josh Becker. He invited me as well as the mayor of Half Moon Bay, of Pacifica, and Nick from Pescadero to a lunch meeting, just trying to get a better sense of what the issues are on the coast side. And so I took the opportunity to express all our concerns about wildfire specific issues with the area of eucalyptus behind El Granada and some of the things we've been working on there. We also talked a lot, all the coastside communities are really concerned about transportation and the inability to get around, especially during high traffic times, such as the weekends, and just the infrastructure issues that could, just sort of brainstorming the types of things that could be put in place to solve that. So I think it was an interesting conversation. Nothing specific came out of it, but I wanted to update you on that. Okay, let's move on. Michelle Dragoni, I see you have your hand raised, but we don't usually do public comment during this time. So if you have any questions, please put them into the chat. We're going to talk about future agendas. We have a lot, a long list of things, but the things that are on the existing agenda that I put forth tonight for September 22nd, and then date TBD in the future. And then I have several things that came up in addition tonight. So I'll just list those off, and we need to talk about priorities here and figure out what needs to go on the September 22nd agenda, and then what we can push to future meetings if we have them. September 22nd, the Moss Beach SR1 Congestion and Safety Improvements Project. An update on that. And then Len had been talking to Nicholas Calderon about a project or about an agenda item with SMC Parks, specific to parking Quarry Park. But I think there may be some other things that come out of that. So those I had tentatively scheduled for the 22nd. Other things, we have the El Granada and Quarry Park scoping project, which we heard about from Kellex tonight. I'm actually just going to say, I think that there's nothing major that we'll have by the next meeting on that. So I think that should be pushed to a meeting in October. We've had a lot of talk about lighting. We had heard those two members of the community speak tonight. So I just put a lighting code compliance as a potential topic. Tonight, it came up about the fire station lighting. There's Meteor Creek Bridges, which is something Len had requested. there's a website upgrade. There's the revegetating medians in El Granada issue. There's the petition that Keith Mangold would like to present, and then there's Comcast. So I know that's a lot. I would like to hear from members of the council 1 or 2 items that they would like to prioritize for the next meeting. Okay, Dan?
Yeah, so I'd like to prioritize the information that the member of the community is offering to really kind of educate the not only the council but the community on some of this, lighting, the effects to the human body with this LED lighting. There's been an enormous amount of people in the community that have been concerns. I've talked to a number. I think the lighting is, there was a big post on Nextdoor months back. People are concerned, and I think starting with the education, I think that's important. So I would very much look forward to having a agenda item so that these 2 gentlemen can come and kind of have equal amounts of time and kind of explain what science, they know, how they can really just educate, at a preliminary level, whatever it takes, half hour, 40 minutes. To educate the community.
Okay, so that's your vote, is for the lighting. Okay. I'm going to go in the order of hands raised. Greg is next.
Can I ask some questions also before I vote?
Sure.
The SMC parks and parking in Quarry Park, why does that have to be on September 22nd?
I don't know that it does.
Okay.
One can speak to that when it's his turn.
All right.
Good question though. Yeah, I just had tentatively put that there.
I think we ought to hear from Mangold because, I want to not only honor the work he's done, but I think that's an amazing set of community feedback. Has the MCC ever gotten 450 signatures on a petition? So I'd like to see that covered. And as far as the lighting, it's not just the people who've been here. I have received several complaints from neighborhood lighting in my area of Montera, as well as the continued violations at the fire station. People are irritated about it. It's not life and death, but it's going on every day. So.
Okay, thank you. Next, Jill.
Thanks, Michelle. I would like to have an agenda item to produce a letter for the fire station lighting, also to the fire district, but this one would be on the upcoming construction of the new Moss Beach Fire Station 44. So I would like to be prepared when that comes across the MCC's office. They have that, they're going to be starting design, and we're going to have the same problems we had with Fire Station 41. So I would like to invite Mark Baker and Bill Sofke to join in that presentation for this agenda item on just basic overall residential commercial government lighting on the Midcoast. That's what's most important to me. And I would like to have Lisa Ketchum from SMC Planning and Chris Johnson from CDRC and anyone else who wants to participate in that agenda item.
Okay, thanks, Jill. Next one.
Dave, were you going to comment on that item? I had something different.
Yeah, let's just go around and everyone can comment on this turn.
We don't need
Basically, I would like to talk about the El Granada medians at our next meeting. I expect we can get a good report from QA. The project, while it may not be finished, it's a good transition point. Also, Nicholas Calderon wants to speak to using the C1 segment for an overflow parking for Quarry Park. So it involves the change of that area as well. So I think they belong together, and it's good to do this in advance of the following meeting, which we should have the award of the RFP done by the time we get to that meeting, and we'll probably want to visit that area again.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Dave?
We could expand the lighting issue a bit to be general code compliance issues and the lack of response from the planning code compliance team to a wide variety of code violations. I've had, because of my experiences in affiliation and mentioning this over and over again to a lot of people come to me with code violation problems, and they don't all make it to MCC issues or reports. But effectively, and Lisa and I have been experiencing this now for any code compliance has been extremely reluctant to do any enforcement in San Mateo County. So lighting is a very specific subset of that, and I understand there's a lot of interest in it, but we might want to consider expanding the issue to a separate agenda item for code compliance in general. I'd be happy to help work on that.
Okay, thank you, Dave, for that.
I have a follow-on question in that area. I thought we had heard from Supervisor Horsley that from his standpoint, he had planned no further action from his office. And I just wanted to confirm that as far as what we said in lighting so far. Want to confirm
that was specific to the fire station. Yes,
exactly.
You're right.
Okay, so in support of what Dave said, I think we need a broader platform to have leverage. That just going back on the same point at the same station is not useful.
Agreed.
Can I ask something based on what?
Well, let me have you wait for 1 second. So there's a lot of interest in lighting. I definitely want to get to that. But before we do that, I want to make sure everyone on the council has had a chance to express their interest, and Claire hasn't had a chance to speak yet. So let's go to Claire and then we can go back.
I don't have a specific new topic to add.
Or any of these topics that I mentioned, particularly of interest to you that you think should be at the next meeting.
I would support a agenda item on code compliance in general. I honestly I shouldn't say this because I don't want to be anti-scientific, but I don't think it matters whether there's a scientific basis or not for having certain types of lighting. In our context, what matters is that it doesn't fit the code. So I think that's what the approach we should take to that. I kind of am a little bit uncomfortable with people generously offering their time and expertise for us, that we should probably talk with them first and make sure it's what we need before we schedule them on the agenda.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and that's why I put on a TBD item to be lighting code compliance. My personal opinion is that we should not have any more agenda items on the fire station in El Granada. I think that that's been made very clear that there's not going to be, that anything we do is not going to be effective. Right, we've already written 2 letters on that specific topic. Anything that we have, any issues we have should be taken to the fire district. But code compliance, as Dave mentioned, is an issue. Specifically lighting, but it's even broader than that. So I think the decision is, the decision we need to make is, what is the scope of that issue and who wants to work on it? And is that going to be something that people will have time to do and bring forward in 2 weeks? Or should we schedule that for one of the October meetings?
The broader issue is definitely much longer than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Jill's point was, she just reiterated, I think, that you're talking about the new Moss Beach proposal for, correct? That's what you want to look at.
That's
yeah,
true.
I definitely agree on that, but that's not going to be by next week.
No, there's no rush.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I haven't heard about that. So I actually don't know what's the timing look like. Where is that at in the process?
It was mentioned during the fire district's meeting, not tonight, the one 2 weeks ago, I think. You can look at the Zoom on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're just beginning the process. They're where Station 41 was about 5 years ago.
Okay. Okay. So definitely, who wants to work on the lighting code compliance issue? Dave has expressed interest. Who else?
I want to say that I think that the code compliance is premature. It's just going to consume a lot of time. There's already been a precedent that the county is not compliant. They're not doing anything. I think we need to relook at our strategy here. And I think
that's what the agenda item is, Dan.
Hold on. Let me finish, please. So we need to relook at the strategy. And I think we need to start with education. And we've got two people that can educate, not only the council, but it'll be on record. We'll be able to ask any questions. And then from that, then once we learned more about the problems that some lighting creates, then we can start to go to the county or, the community and say that, hey, we should really be following these codes because we are creating health problems for certain individuals.
That's specific to the lighting issue, not code compliance.
We were talking about code compliance on lighting.
No, there are two separate agenda items.
Okay, well, I still stand by what I say. I think we need to start with education.
My personal feeling, and we can certainly hear from other members of the public, but is that those people have a website. They have the ability to educate people, having them come and they've certainly made their statements. They've sent it to all of us. We've all heard what they had to say. I'm not a huge fan of taking up one of our agenda items on that anti-LED topic, particularly. Lighting in general is an important topic. I agree. But this, I don't know. If other members of the council, if a majority of the members of the council want to have them come at one of our future meetings and give a presentation, then I'll accept it. But I'm not hearing a majority of the council say they want that.
Well, I'm very interested. I want to learn more. I want to be able to ask questions. I want to be able to hear the questions the rest of the council will be asking. So I think it's very important to have it. And who's against having them come and offer?
So far, 2 people are for it, Dan and Jill. Is anyone else? We need 2 other people who want to have them come.
I thought I heard Greg say that he was.
Greg, do you want to have them come and speak?
Well, I guess I want to see where the broader issue goes.
Okay.
I do think we have a problem, and I'm sure they have something to contribute. But we have an obvious enforcement problem at the fire station, and nothing's being done. So I want to know what it takes to get enforcement.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful if 2 or 3 people in the council take this issue on and try to get in touch with the people responsible for code compliance, would meet with potentially Lisa to better understand, her opinions on the topic. I think there's a lot of work to be done here. I don't personally think it starts with that presentation on LEDs.
Yeah, and we should be clear that once both the community planning director, Steve Bonowitz, and the supervisor for the district have said they do not regard it as a code violation, then it's no longer a code compliance issue. It's we would like you to change the law or your opinion issue.
Well, on that note, the conditions of approval very clear, and it's very obvious that the conditions of approval are not being followed. And I'm actually shocked that it sounds like the number of council members are just 100% accepting that. They're accepting that even though the conditions of approval are not being met, they're accepting that everything's okay. Anyway, that's a side note.
We're not accepting that it's okay. We're saying the approach that you've been taking, asking them to do a code compliance, is no longer an effective approach. You have to find some other approach.
Well, I don't want to discuss that right now. I will say that, yeah, I think the council is going to go down a rabbit hole if they start to talk to the county about code enforcement. It's just going to be a big wasted effort. And I reiterate, I think time is well spent to educate the council and the community about the unknowns on LED lighting.
If those lights were not LED and they were some other bright light, you wouldn't be happy with that either. Why don't you meet with these people and find out what you can find out for yourself, and maybe you could, share some of that with us rather than.
I think the most effective way to do it would be just to have, one agenda item, and if the council wants to interview these two people before they, it's just, I don't know, it's just taking a lot of time. I think let them have their, 10 minutes.
Dan, we answered that, asked you to do more research and come back.
Yeah, I heard you.
Yeah, let's end that. We've already decided that, I don't hear support from a majority of the council on having them. I have asked, so far we only have Dave, who's volunteered to work on the code compliance issue. If no one else volunteers at this meeting to work with him, I don't think it's going to move forward. You can certainly reach out to him privately, but just based on past experience, if no one's committing now, I don't hear a lot of appetite for people to work on that issue. No one wants to work with Dave?
Go ahead and drop it for now.
Okay. So,
I'm just shocked at what's happening here is that the council's blocking information to the community.
No, the information can go out. We're not blocking any information. They have a website.
Making it more difficult. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The other thing, okay, so that's off the table. Lighting code compliance is pushed out. I had Lance explain his rationale for having Nicholas at the next meeting, and I think that makes sense. Does anyone object or support that? I don't have anything else that's really competing with that.
Sorry, I didn't hear any statement about why parking to be on the agenda.
He said that it was going to be the medians.
Nicholas wants to make a proposal regarding the median lands that have been cleared. So, and I would also like Quavo to come to help wrap up the work on the project.
The parking on the medians, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That was never said.
No. People aren't going to like that.
It's just in one area of the medians closest to Quarry Park, the circular area.
Yeah, the community's going to be outraged.
So it's worth having it.
You flip this back.
I think it's worth having that as a topic. It's
in the
things
agenda
are
item,
moving forward.
I mentioned the median that's affected.
Definitely. Okay. I also heard Greg supporting Keith Mangold's petition. I wanted to ask, do the members of the council want to have that as a whole agenda item?
Oh, a short one.
Mm-hmm.
I think he deserves some little bit of recognition. It's similar to the other one we had from the other Granada resident, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So a point to raise there, I think the Coastal Trail Bridge people raised about 1,200 signatures. just to put magnitude, there were more people working on it, et cetera. The other thing I've looked at when you do this is, as we move signatures forward, to what extent have they been done within a formal framework that allows them to be audited? I don't think either group did that, and there are notes from the League of Women Voters and others on how to do it. This is the reason not to listen to what Keith is doing, but we do have to sort of take care when we look at those beyond have the individual moving it forward on their own initiative, which is what was
agreed. And he asked that we sort of like, I forget the word he used, but basically put our support behind that and take it to the county. And, you know, I needed to know if that's something that we want to do. I mean, certainly I agree that he deserves the recognition for that, but I'm not sure on the next step beyond, you know, we have a petition, we have all these signatures. What do we do next? How do we endorse it, I guess, or take it forward? So I would love like one or two members of the council to work with him on that.
I'm happy to
bring it forward. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Greg, do you want to?
Oh, is that Greg? Did he?
So just ask Greg as he had brought it forward.
Yeah. I'll work with him and Lynn on that.
But,
okay.
The other point I want to make about it is the point I would see potentially bringing that forward is on the first meeting in October. That should be after the grant has been awarded that Kellex described for us. And that's a good way to kick off the question of how do we gather opinions from the community to move forward. Since what Kellex has indicated is she wants to know about that, but she wants a process to establish whatever the known science is as well.
Okay. Well, I was going to have this as I'm leaning toward doing 3 items at September 22nd. The medians and parking, basically everything on the medians with Quavo and Nicholas, the petition presentation, a short presentation on that from Keith. And then we have the Moss Beach, the Caltrans project, basically, is the 3rd item. Okay, so that's what I'm leaning toward doing for September 22nd. And we still have a lot of things that, you know, are on our list, but they can be pushed into October. Sound good? Okay. 3 minutes past our planned adjournment time. I'm surprised we did this.
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
Claire. Dan.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Jill. All right. We really need a vocal.
Yes, I'm sorry, I can't find the button. Yes.
It's okay. I know how it goes. Len.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Dave. Okay. It's unanimous. We're adjourned.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Well.
Good night.